I would never wish to divorce the Great Pyramids from the ancient Egyptians. There are a lot of wrong ideas about what I think about this.
Okay, please clarify, because I'm a little hazy on it.
It's complicated, all right? But inside the Great Pyramid, there are 4 very narrow shafts which point up at the sky. 2 of them point north and south from the so-called King's Chamber. I say so-called because no burial was ever found in it. Yeah. There was a sarcophagus found in it. It's still there, but they had to build the chamber around it. They couldn't bring it up in a funeral ceremony. It's too big to get through the corridor. So 2 shafts point north and south, and they do actually exit on the outside of the body of the pyramid. And back in the 19th century, explorers climbed up there. There they go. You're looking at the King's Chamber South, King's Chamber North, and both of those, you could roll cannonballs down them from the outside, and they would turn up in the King's Chamber. But the shafts of the Queen's Chamber are more complicated. Until, I believe it was 1872, nobody knew they were there. The inner wall of the Queen's Chamber was completely smooth, but there was actually, he was a Freemason called John Wayneman Dixon, who had explored the King's Chamber, and he figured, look, there's shafts in the King's Chamber, maybe there's shafts in the Queen's Chamber. And he went around knocking on the walls, and he found 2 hollow points, and he broke those through. You could do that in 1872. And lo and behold, they opened up into these 2 shafts, which go horizontally at first and then point up at the sky. They do not exit on the outside of the pyramid. They're very, very mysterious. The thing is that the angle of those shafts points to significant stars, 4 significant stars, in the period in which Egyptologists believe that the Great Pyramid was built. Archaeoastronomy, which is a universal language, one of them is the lowest of the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And the constellation of Orion was identified with the god Osiris. He was seen as the celestial image of the god Osiris. So having a shaft pointing at the belt of Orion or Osiris makes perfect sense. And others point at 2 of the 2 northern shafts point at 2 of the circumpolar stars. I forget exactly which ones now. And again, they point at them in the era when the pyramids were built, because the positions of stars in the sky change very slowly down the ages. So from an astronomical point of view, it would be absurd to disconnect the Great Pyramid entirely from the ancient Egyptians. But there's a problem. And that problem is the ground pattern of the 3 Great Pyramids and their relationship to, it's not an accident that Orion's belt has 3 stars and that the Great Pyramids are 3, and that they are positioned on the ground, anybody can see it, in a pattern that looks very similar to Orion's belt. It's like a painter has got his easel in front of him and his canvas, and he's looking up at the sky and he's painting on the canvas the 3 stars of Orion's belt, and then he lowers that canvas down to his feet, and that's what you have on the ground at Giza.
It's that perfect.
It's that perfect, but it's only perfect 12,500 years ago, roughly 12,000. Let's say a round figure, 12,000 years ago. Yeah. These changes in the sky are actually caused by a motion of the Earth itself. It's a very slow motion. It's a cycle. It takes 25,920 years to complete, and the pattern of the stars on the ground and the stars in the sky and the pyramids on the ground and their relationship to the Nile River and the Milky Way locks perfectly
at 12,000.
About 12,000 years ago, not on a single day, but over an epoch of about 1,000 years, and then it gradually shifts out, because this is a very, very slow change that takes place. So you have the ground saying 12,500 years ago, and you have the shaft saying 4,500 years ago.
So one might assume that those shafts were maybe carved out at a different time, potentially?
Well, yes. The way I look at it is, I think the site was sacred more than 12,000 years ago. Right. I think ground platforms were created there. It's important to remember the Great Pyramid is already built around a natural hill. The first 30 feet inside the Great Pyramid is a natural mound, and there are traditions in ancient Egypt of the primeval mound. And if you enter the Great Pyramid, and you may or may not have been able to do that when you went there. I went in. Did you get down to the subterranean chamber?
I think everything was. Oh no, we did. The subterranean was much bigger.
Was it a very rough-hewn chamber, cut out of solid bedrock, or was it a built chamber?
There's the built one that we saw the is it called a sarcophagus? No.
Yes, that's the King's Chamber.
We
That's
went to the King's Chamber,
Yeah.
but I believe that there was another one. I can't remember.
You can see that on the screen there. You can see the subterranean chamber. You see the entrance in the north face.
Yep. No, I don't think we went that far.
And then
we went to.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about 100 feet vertically beneath the base of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's about 600 feet beneath the apex of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And it's cut out of solid bedrock. And my view is, and it's only in theory, and I don't claim that I'm correct, it's just put this forward for thought, is that the original sacred site on the Giza Plateau was that natural primeval mound beneath which the ancients hewed out this enormous subterranean chamber, which is it looks like a rough, unfinished chamber, but it has curious acoustic effects, which are in themselves very interesting.
And then that people talk about.
It's an amazing place to be, and actually you get a resonance. We tried an experiment with an opera singer up in the King's Chamber. You could hear her down in the subterranean chamber, which is quite remarkable in itself. But I think that was the original sacred site. I think the ground platforms were put in position, and I think the ancient Egyptians finished off the job in a brilliant way. In a brilliant way, overbuilding and commemorating and memorizing a site of enormous significance and importance to them.
Sorry, when you say finished off, I'm dumb, so I'm going to ask dumb questions. When you say finished off, what exactly do you theorize?
I think the vast majority of the Great Pyramids as we see them today were the work of the ancient Egyptians.
Okay, got it.
I think they were building on a prehistoric foundation.
Okay.
And it had been sacred for
So your point is
thousands
not
and
to take away from what ancient. You think they built most of it. You think we're just discounting that there might have been people here 12,500 years ago that also built something.
Correct, because that runs against the archaeological mainstream, and this is where you get into the issues of geology and the issue of the Great Sphinx, because I think, again, it's just my theory. I don't claim I'm 100% right, and everybody's got to listen to me and tell the Egyptologists to go away. Just my view is that on the Giza Plateau were the three massive ground platforms of the three Great Pyramids, the subterranean chamber beneath what is now the Great Pyramid, the megalithic temples, the so-called Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple right beside the Sphinx, and the so-called mortuary temples. These are all megalithic that stand beside the Great Pyramids.
Those are the three little ones that are next to them?
Those are the so-called satellite pyramids.
Okay.
But there are megalithic temples. When I say megalithic, you're looking at structures where the largest single block weighs 200 tons. These are gigantic.
Wow.
Gigantic blocks of stone, but of particular interest, right in front of the Great Sphinx is an almost completely ruined one, and then just to the south of the Great Sphinx is a rather intact one called the Valley Temple. And this temple is, again, bears evidence of being built in two stages, because when you look at it, you see that its core is made of limestone, enormous limestone blocks in the range of 50 to 100 tons each, maybe more.
You can bring this up, Mark?
In the one on the left, you can see the limestone blocks up at the top. That's the original structure. And I and my colleagues, and particularly Professor Robert Schock from Boston University, who is a geologist, are of the view that the ancient Egyptians renovated a far more ancient limestone temple. So you can see the weathering on the limestone temple, and then you can see the granite blocks that were added by the ancient Egyptians. And the puzzle of those blocks is that they are carefully cut to fit around the weathering in the limestone core blocks. So they were respecting those limestone core blocks. They weren't demolishing them. It would be easy just to cut them flat, if you're going to do this, but no, they didn't. They carefully cut each granite block so it would fit around the weathering pattern.
We'd only do that if you thought that a place was sacred.
You felt it was special, and you were trying to preserve it.